struts like John Wayne, resembles Jim Carrey, and dresses like he's visually impaired. Because he is. Insight with Mark Farrell on the Progressive Radio Network.
Yes. Live from Midtown, New York, it's Insight on PRN. How are you? Beautiful day, New York City. Gorgeous. And if you're listening on the subway, you're probably aware of what was announced by the Transit Association the other day about taking pictures of the dirtiest subway cars. I love this initiative. It's actually the Transportation Union who's having a big qualm with the MTA that actually governs the trains and buses in New York City. So they're looking for really dirty subway cars. Take a picture of it, and you can submit it for a $500 finder's fee if selected, because the union is very, very mad. And I love what they're doing. The MTA actually did away with a bunch of jobs that actually cleans the subway cars. And the MTA says it's doing its good job. It's holding up its word and doing a fine job, outstanding job in cleaning the trains. But the Transportation Union's going, no. I beg to differ. The trains do not look clean. So they want the dirtiest, nastiest, filthiest pictures to be taken, the Transportation Union, and uploaded on social media so the world can see just how dirty the cars are. I love this. What a great way to get the people involved, because it's a win-win for the Transportation Union to depict just how dirty the cars are. And also, it shows that the cars are not being cleaned. So the passengers get to feel some relief that something's being done, some action will be taken, some recourse by the MTA, and maybe they'll be reinstating some jobs. I don't know. It's pretty cool. World Series, are you watching it? I didn't think so. The numbers are really, really low. The overall TV numbers are down a lot. And I'm curious to see what the metrics are. I don't have these numbers for the MLB network, because, I mean, if you hear about something that took place, say, maybe in the sixth inning, you just go on MLB.com, you watch the clip of that specific inning, etc., and then there you go. You saved yourself like 3 hours of watching the Washington Nationals win for the second time in a row. That's like the only winning thing that's happening in Washington. Lots of news, man. You cannot keep up with the news that's going on in Washington. In just a minute, we're going to meet Bryan Fischer. He's the founder of Laugher Site. He's a comedian and a great guy. We're also going to meet, after Bryan, we're going to meet the author of Stay Woke, A People's Guide to Making All Black Lives Matter. She's the author, Tehama Lopez Bunyasi, and we'll meet her after Bryan. Yeah, it's just crazy in Washington. I am just glued to my phone throughout the day, if I can, and when I can, about breaking news, because you just cannot make this material up. And speaking of good material, we'll ask our comic who's waiting on the line about the material, because Bryan Fischer is the founder of Laugher Site. And Laugher Site, I have to say, is becoming a New York institution. This is the 14th year, and it's helping cure blindness. Degenerative retinal diseases have been around for quite some time. There's so many cutting-edge cures on the site, gene therapy and more. But this one night a year at Gotham Comedy Club in New York City on 23rd Street is really neat, because he has amassed great comics like Robert Klein, and he's going to speak about all the other great comics that come there and donate their time. But they pack the house, and people come there to laugh and obviously benefit degenerative retinal diseases. So it's my pleasure to welcome a friend of the show, Bryan Fischer, to the show. Hey, Bryan, how are you?
I was good until you just alarmed me. As somebody that's totally blind, are you telling me that I don't want to touch anything on a subway car?
You should see these pictures. It's unbelievable. Yeah, no you don't, my friend. Stand.
You know, something I'll let the sighted community in on. I have become the foremost expert at using my foot to move things on the subway or in public restrooms, or a little bit of a germaphobe when you're blind, you know. So,
well, why not? I mean,
foot.
Absolutely. Well, you know what? You're a lot of different things. You are a comedian. You are a resilient individual, and we'll get to other things that you're working on in your other careers, but you're a real tech-savvy guy, and we'll get to that. But congratulations, man. 14 years on creating a platform for humor, for degenerative retinal diseases to be funded. I mean, this is something that you should be really proud of, and I hope you are.
I am. We do our small part. You know, we like to think of this as our one night a year that is not only about raising money for retinal degenerative eye disease research and the funding of guide dogs, but also a night where people in the blindness community could come out and just have a great time. The night's all about them, and Gotham does a fantastic job of opening their doors to the blindness community and really going above and beyond, making sure that anybody with a disability is comfortable when at Gotham Comedy Club, and I really commend them for that.
And it's a really cool thing that you do, that you offer persons with disabilities a discounted ticket.
We do. This year again, we're offering the $20 plus 2-item minimum. You just need to, if you have any disability, we welcome you. It doesn't have to just be blindness. Just shoot us in an email at info@laughforsight.com, and we'll make sure we'll confirm with you that you are on that discounted ticket list. It's something we're proud to be able to do for the disability community that gets ignored most of the time. So, it's just our little way of giving back. And the comics are really lining up this year. I mean, every year we always get just comics donating their time. Like
stellar lineup.
This is our 14th year. Not one comic has been paid to do a benefit. We've done 14 in New York, 4 in Los Angeles, and 1 in South Beach. And this year, the lineup is second to none, with Robert Klein returning for his 13th year, Mark Norman, Rich Voss, Bonnie McFarlane, Lenny Marcus, Aaron Berg, Christy Meyer, and host Brian McCarthy. Of course, myself with my guide dog, Wes, will be there as well. And Stephanie Busey, you might recognize the last name. I think her husband may be on Broadway. She'll be there as well. Stephanie herself is a comedian. So
I thought Gary's in Bellevue.
You saw him in Bellevue?
Doesn't he deserve to be in Bellevue?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I saw him on Entourage, and after seeing that, I wouldn't be surprised where he ended up. But he's on Broadway now, so the night is tremendous. It starts at 7 p.m. with the cocktail hour / silent auction, which somebody by the name of Mark Farrell has hosted for quite a long time.
Yeah, and I love it. I have to take a step back, though. It's funny because of the odder and more eccentric you are. Gary Busey's on Broadway. Trump is the president.
Who?
Exactly. Who would have thunk? Who would have thunk? It's just remarkable to be part of this. I was thinking this morning on the way into New York, buddy, did we meet at We Media?
We may have.
I think we did.
It's been a very long time. So, I don't know if anybody should have to know Mark Farrell for as long as I have.
We Media was the first website and magazine for persons with disabilities that launched around 1997. Unfortunately, their demise was the .com boom. But I think that's when we met, and I'm really happy to do so because to contribute to such an incredible night, I mean, the camaraderie in the room, besides the obvious talent of the comics, but just people are really into it, and they want to laugh, they want to see and hear the updates every year. We talk about gene therapy, we talk about technology that's playing such a vital role on helping a lot of people like myself. I mean, from a pocket magnifier to wearing a pair of telescopic devices where I can drive, and then in a few years from now, buddy, I'll be picking you up, or you'll be picking me up in an autonomous vehicle.
It's incredible, and as you know, I work in comedy, but I also work in technology where I teach blind, visually impaired people how to use iPhones, iPads, and Mac computers. There's nothing better when I'm out and about and somebody says to me, how are you using your phone? Because it's an iPhone and it's completely black, and I've got the Bose frames on so I could hear voiceover without anything in my ears. And what's incredible is we've gotten to a point where all of this technology has become mainstream. I don't own one particular product that is specifically designed for blind people anymore. Everything is mainstream. The words accessibility, inclusive design have really been adopted by the giant corporations, and a lot of these giant corporations who we always thought were so evil are doing fantastic jobs with improving the lives of people with disabilities.
And it's also nice is that, what's in vogue, and I'm sure it's a very topical conversation. Everything is bigger nowadays, whether it's font in magazines, furniture, just a lot of visual aspects are larger. It's like the world has become smaller, but everything in it seems to be larger.
Yeah, that's very true. And there's a lot of companies that are doing fantastic things because, vision loss, there are several different stages, and as the population grows older and older, more and more people are suffering from forms of macular degeneration, but they don't need a full screen reader. So it's great, with these dark modes coming out everywhere, but now a lot of websites, the first thing you see there is make the font size bigger or change the contrast, and companies and websites are well aware of this. And as you probably heard, we had the little thing where a certain company named Domino's didn't want to make their website
comply.
I'm sorry, but a phone number nowadays, have you talked to people? I don't want to talk to people.
Absolutely.
Nobody pays attention anymore. So being able to order my food, not that I'd be ordering Domino's here in New York City, but being able to just do everything online or with an app and everything, it just makes your life so much easier. To be able to talk to my air conditions or my microwave or my alarm system is incredible. I mean, I was sitting one day in a restaurant with my buddy talking on the Bose frames. I answered a call, and he had never seen me do that before. And as soon as I hung up, he goes, "Oh, my God, you're Iron Man."
Oh, I love it. That's your new nickname.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, so, Iron Man from the first movie, because I saw the last few, all with described video for the
you're
blind,
right.
And the last few were terrible.
Absolutely, I concur. I have to share a funny story with you. My 10-year-old said to me, "Dad, Facebook is for old people." And I'm like, you know what, my friend? It's pretty ubiquitous. It's I use it for work, yada, yada, yada. So the other day, I update my phone. And I go on a website for Facebook, and next thing you know, I see at the top font selector sizes. So I'm like, oh my God, he's right. I am old. It's now catering to older people. But then I realized it was my browser in general. So I'm like, okay, I'm not that old.
Yeah. Well, first off, when did your son get to be 10 years old? Wasn't he born yesterday?
Yes, that's my wife. I thought so, man. Yeah.
I don't know where the time goes, but yeah. And speaking of time, what made me feel old was when we started putting together this year's benefit, and it occurred to me, because there was one year we didn't do, I believe it was 2008, when the economy was in the toilet. We just didn't do the benefit.
That's right.
So I've been running Laugh for Sight for 1/3 of my life.
That's crazy.
Insane. It makes. I just dated myself here, but
you're that much younger than me.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Oh, yeah. So I don't know how old you are, but we won't out you on the radio.
Oh,
here.
I'll tell you. I'm proudly 53, my friend.
Okay. I'm 45. So,
wow. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Hey, we look damn good, man.
Well, it must be all the booze and other stuff you did, because you look much older.
Well, it's funny because you're right. It's all the drugs.
Millennials, they keep me young.
Oh, my
and
God.
One day I had a millennial say to me, "Hey, by the way, you have gray in your beard?" I didn't before now.
I know. Why did you have to open your mouth for crying out loud?
Blind, I assume I still look like Brad Pitt. Don't ruin the illusion.
Bryan Fischer is my guest. The show is Insight on Progressive Radio Network. Laugh for Sight is having a big gig, the 14th annual Laugh for Sight on Monday, October 28th, Gotham Comedy Club, 23rd Street right here in New York City. For tickets, it's laughforsight.com, laughforsight.com. And is it info@laughforsight@gmail for a discount?
No, it's info@laughforsight.com. That's info@LAUGHFORSIGHT.com. Or if you're not great with technology, you can call Gotham directly to reserve your tickets. 212-367-9000. Tickets are $40 plus a 2-item minimum for general admission, or $125 for reserved VIP seating with an open bar. And, of course, if you do have a disability, you can hit us up at info@laughforsight.com for that discounted ticket of $20 plus the 2-item minimum.
And let's get this clear right now. One of the 2-item requirements is a lap dance by yourself, Bryan Fischer.
Oh, yeah. That's
and your dog.
I mean,
that's a little extra, though.
Well, if I'm giving lap dances, because this is my new favorite story, does that mean the NYPD will give me a behind-the-scenes tour of their headquarters like they did to some porn star yesterday?
Absolutely, yeah. Isn't that great? I love this news, man.
I love it, man. You can't make this
You
stuff
cannot.
up,
It's the best comedy out there.
It's you don't need comedians anymore. You just have to read the news.
So all the funds benefit the Shea Institute, which is part of UPenn, which is doing incredible work. Talk about that, Bryan.
It's Shea Eye Institute and Guiding Eyes for the Blind, because I am a guide dog handler. So it's both organizations. And, Shea, I've been there with Dr. Sam Jacobson, who is one of the leading gene therapy researchers over the last, I guess he's been my doctor since I was diagnosed at 12. So I'm trying to do the math, but
a long time, my friend.
A very long time. And he started out at Baskin Palmer down in Miami. They're doing great things all over the country. But come on, people, let's get with the cure. I mean, it's about time. I know we're not raising a ton of money for them. We're just doing our little thing to help. But it'd be nice to one day get a cure. But we are getting close. At least people with my situation and are having the realistic opportunity of potentially seeing again. And I know people that have never seen, due to certain improvements and advancements, can at least now see shapes and colors sometimes and everything. And it's just a fascinating time in the world of retinal degenerative eye disease research. And I bet that's not a phrase that's been said a lot.
Absolutely. The reality is, I think in our lifetime, big things are going to happen. Absolutely. Next 15, 20 years. I don't think our vision's actually decline. I think it's going to improve because of the technology and gene therapy and everything that's available.
Yeah.
Or will be available, rather.
It is an exciting time, and hopefully we'll eventually be like, well, we don't need to do Laugh for Sight anymore because they've cured blindness or certain kinds of blindness and everything.
Yeah, and in my particular instance, there actually is such an anomaly with my condition, retinoschisis, that there are some trials that are happening out there, but of course, as comedy would write itself, within that anomaly, I'm an anomaly, so I'm actually not a candidate for that. So, and I have to tell you, Bryan, even if I was, it has to be something that's a surefire thing.
Exactly.
Because, you know what, I have one eye, it's 2400, and one eye, it's 2100. So the 2100, there's no gambling with that. So if I can see my kids and, get through the day, you got to give me a 1,000% guarantee that it's going to improve it, not be a detriment.
Yeah. People, do not go to a strip mall in Daytona Beach, Florida to get your eyes performed on. Things will end poorly. And with a lot of these eye procedures, I'm the same as you. With me, it's the retina. The retina is a very, very thing. They say a retina is, a tissue. I never knew this. Is actually like 3 sheets of paper together. Well, if you separate all them, the retina is thinner than one of those. And this is a one-shot deal, so you really... unless you're in your 70s or 80s, you really want to wait until there is something for you. And I'm the same as you. I'm what's known as a new mutation. My blood has been all around the world several times, and they've still yet to detect which gene is defective in me. I got to do things the hard way like yourself.
So I'm not sure if I like Mutation Man better or Iron Man better.
I like Blind Mofo. But,
all right. I'll go with that. I'm writing all these down because this is great material for me on Monday night. I love it. So, Bryan, what got you into comedy?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I started in comedy, everybody was like, I was in a dark place. I was losing my vision, and amazingly, going blind was much more difficult than being blind, at least from a psychological standpoint. And I never was really big into therapy. I know you got to meet the right therapist, and it works for a ton of people. It just didn't work for me. I guess I didn't meet that right therapist. And I was always involved in acting and improv, and improv is such a visual art. And for years, people had been telling me I should become a stand-up comic. So people that hate my comedy, you have all those people to blame that have been talking me to get into it. And I just started doing it, and before long, I had some minor success, and I'm not a headliner. I'm an opening act, and I'm fine with that. I've been very fortunate to work with pretty much everybody I would want to work with in comedy. I've performed in every club in New York and L.A. except Dangerfields. For some reason, Dangerfields in New York has never booked me. But what are you going to do? But So and it just kind of came to be, and now I don't perform as much as I used to. I just do some corporate events and a couple shows a year. I get ready for Laugh for Sight as my day job with technology has really kind of blossomed and everything. But I still enjoy doing it. I still get extremely nervous before I get on stage anytime, like, oh, my God. But once I start getting going and, you get that first laugh, everything starts to settle in.
Yeah, so tell me about that. After you overcome that nervousness, Bryan, how do you feel?
I feel great, and it's interesting. I always thought the greatest, feeling would be getting that big laugh on stage, but I actually taught a 10-year-old who's blind how to use an iPad, and that was I don't know if this is age, much deeper fulfilling feeling, because God forbid they never cure this kid's vision. He's a really bright kid. And, I'm just going to give a little heads up. I can't say too much about it, but if you're an early raiser, check out Good Morning America on Monday morning. Laugh for Sight won't be on there, but there is going to be an interesting piece about visual research on Good Morning America on Monday. And that feeling of teaching somebody so young that may need these skills for the rest of their life blows away any feeling of killing in a comedy club.
Sure. So, Bryan, when you're up there performing, do you feel elated? Do you feel not blind? Do you feel a connection? Tell me how you feel. And,
I feel nervous until I picture Mark Farrell completely naked. That really settles me in.
Oh.
And
now we're really clear in the air. Thank you. It's confirmed. Reach around on the way, my friend.
Once I get going, it's a feeling of relaxation. And when you're controlling the room and really directing them in the way that you want to go, it's kind of like a natural high. It's just and don't get me wrong, I've been on stage plenty of times where you say something that you think is going to kill, and it just falls flat, and you're like, really? And you just got to keep moving on and everything. Not every joke is going to kill and everything, and you just have to know how to react to that and move on and everything. My biggest fear, because I have to, it's just that I'm going to forget something. And there's nothing worse when you come off stage and you had this great line that you wanted to use and you completely skipped over it, because I've done that before. I'm like, you got to be kidding me and everything. And there's nothing worse when you think you've bombed and you come off stage and everybody's like, oh, great job, you were fantastic, and you're like, everybody's lying to you.
Hey, you made a great point about being on stage and listening to the crowd and the audience. But now for myself and for you, that's a key component. But other comics can actually see the expressions when something either going over well. Usually, obviously, it's audible when it goes over well. But sometimes, it's just expressions. So how do you know, is it just by experience or your vast intellect, my friend, that you're doing well if you're saying something that may not go over with a chuckle, but it's still going over well?
Yeah, there are other things besides a laugh. Sometimes you're looking to get a groan, and you're like, yeah, I got him to do what I wanted and everything. And Robert Klein and I have had this conversation because he thinks it's easier for me that I can't see the audience and their expressions. But, I'm a big fan of Rich Voss, who will be at Laugh for Sight. I've never seen anybody better at working a crowd, from just what he's seeing and everything. And that's something I really wish I could do, because I do come from a improvisational background, but I can't really do improv according to, and you don't want people heckling you, because it's not always done in an intelligent way, and I've had to deal with just bizarre heckling instances. You would think that nobody would heckle a blind comic, but it definitely does happen, and thankfully it doesn't really happen at Laugh for Sight. The audience gets what they're there for and everything, and they do understand that most of the comics there all of the comics there have donated their time and have really just come out to support the cause. So the audience is always fantastic at Laugh for Sight. If you haven't been there, you're really missing out on just a tremendous night.
And the lineup you've attracted yearly also includes Seinfeld, Stephen Wright,
Gilbert Gottfried, and then if L.A., you're talking Sarah Silverman, Kevin Nealon, Kevin Pollak, Stephen Wright here in New York, John Oliver.
Wow.
So it really is
a real who's who.
Who's who, yeah.
Yeah, it truly is. LaughForSight.com, LaughForSight.com. This Monday night, the Gotham Comedy Club, 23rd Street. What's that number again, Bryan?
212-367-9000. The address, in case that was the number you were looking for, 208 West 23rd Street, right next to the Chelsea Hotel, underneath all the construction, which never seems to end over there on 23rd Street.
And, Bryan, I think it's important to note that in terms of accessibility, in terms of a lot of clubs and venues in New York City, Gotham is very accessible.
Extremely accessible. The owner, Chris Mazzilli, has run that club for a very long time, and he's committed to accessibility and making sure that everybody there, especially people there with a service dog, are all comfortable and everything. They really do a tremendous job of opening their doors and making this a night to raise money for blindness research, but also making it a night for all the blind people in New York City. And believe it or not, we get people that come in from out of town, so those people are welcome as well to come on by and have a great time.
I got 3 people coming in from New Jersey and 2 from New York City, my friend.
My mommy is coming up from Florida. You've met my mom before. She hasn't been in
You can't call your mother your mommy if you want to be called Iron Maiden and Mutation Man. Come on now, Brian.
The woman who gave me this disease.
Okay. Whoa, okay. Now it's time to call up a shrink. Bryan Fischer, always a pleasure. I can't wait to share the stage with you on Monday night, and it's great being a friend of yours.
Great being a friend of yours, Mark. We appreciate everything you do helping us promote Laugh for Sight, and can't wait to see you on stage there Monday night at Gotham Comedy Club.
All the best, Iron Man.
Thanks, bro. Take care.
Insight on the Progressive Radio Network. My name is Mark Farrell. It is 29 minutes after the hour of 11 o'clock in New York City. Stay Woke is an amazing new book, a people's guide to making all Black lives matter. It is such a critical point in our current times that this book has hit the shelves, and it brings me great pleasure to welcome Tehama Lopez Bunyasi to the show. Hello.
Hi. How are you?
I'm very well. It's a beautiful day. Are you in Maryland?
I'm in Northern Virginia.
Oh, Northern Virginia. Okay, not too far off. I love Virginia.
Yeah. It's a good place.
We had to jump right into this. What is structural racism? Because, first of all, I just find that your book is so well-timed and is chock-filled with so many things that this country just needs to absorb. And I don't even know where to start, but the structural racism was very interesting to me.
Well, thank you for that very generous intro to our book. Structural racism, what we're really trying to get at is the matter of life disparities. So usually when we think about racism, I think what most people think about is like the way individual people treat each other. And they think about stereotypes, and they think about epithets, and they think about hate. Structural racism is really trying to get at the idea that like people's lives are structured differently because of race, and because of that we have different opportunities and different outcomes. So part of that can be, if you're looking at the beginning of life, the fact that Black babies aren't reaching their first year of life at the same rate that white babies are is a matter of structural racism, right? These babies don't know whether or not anybody likes or hates them. I mean, for the most part, like, people are loving on them, right? But that they're, even when you control for socioeconomic status of the mothers, right, of these children, like, you were still seeing this disparity, right? So that's like one example. Another example is thinking about the ways that even our federal government has played a strong hand in shaping where people live today, the practice of redlining and the assessment and appraisal of neighborhoods, and then what that means for people getting loans. And so then, we end up with these wildly segregated neighborhoods. Doesn't matter if it's in the north or the south. They're all over the place. And based on, where you live, what kind of amenities do you have?
Absolutely.
Do you live near a park? Are you in a place that has, like, a lively commerce? What are the schools like? And we fight over these public schools all the time. We talk about them being good or bad schools. And, like, I think there's a lot of racism and classism wrapped up into those assessments. So structural racism is really getting at, these differences of life chances. It's getting into, why are certain communities policed more than others? Why are people getting sentenced at different rates when they're in the courtroom? That's structural racism.
Phenomenal. I'm going to ask both of us, to push the pause button for a second. Okay. Because I want to ask you a question, because your book is so timely, and of course it's so well linked to the White House. And I think I'm a realist. And I thought I had my finger on the pulse in terms of sociological viewpoints, et cetera, but I was wrong. So do you think racism was just kind of in a dormant stage before President Trump got into office and he gave it the green light? Or do you think that it's just given people who are unhappy another way to vent it?
I think that this has been ongoing. I think it precedes Donald Trump. It precedes his candidacy. Certainly structural racism is endemic to the United States. As far as the kind of like that kind of nasty,
candor, yeah.
The white nationalism that people are seeing, this has been bubbling. It's been going on. It's never really stopped. It's just like, is there a change in the norms about whether it's acceptable in public? I think that is changing some, and I think that the president is playing a role in making that a little bit more mainstream.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I thought certainly with Barack Obama as president, we were a little bit more evolved. But now if Barack Obama were new on the scene now and he hadn't run, et cetera, and he was running now, I don't think he'd have a chance, and a snowball's chance in hell right now because of all the outwardly hate and anguish. But moving on from that point, I just wanted to state that because I know that's obviously kind of like the 800-pound elephant in the room. But going back to so many of the points that you made and well stated, like black men are 6 times likely to be incarcerated as white men. Just one example. I mean, and why we need to stop the blaming black culture for crime and to get tough on poverty, because that's not accurate.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, like there's poverty in all kinds of communities, right? But and I think Americans in general, they try to make poverty a pathological thing. They try to blame the people who are poor, which is we both find that really immoral. My co-author and I, just to blame people for
Watts,
their own.
I'm sorry for not mentioning her name, Candace Watts Smith.
Mm-hmm, and she's at Penn State, and why we're blaming people for their poverty. Like, we try to take it back to, like, let's talk about children, right? What do children have to do with coming up with the circumstances of their lives, right? When we bring in these conversations about, like, meritocracy and people trying hard or not trying hard, and that whole, like, pull yourself up by the bootstraps kind of talk, that all kind of gets obliterated when we talk about children who are not in any way having, like, they have so minimal agency over anything in their lives, but they're born into radically different circumstances from one another, and so we try to treat that and really kind of bust up some myths in this. So I'm sorry, I feel like I've gotten off your original question.
No. It's all so pertinent. So actually, let's go on to the myths, because there are so many out there that exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so meritocracy is something we talk a lot about. And now, the idea of merit seems like a really great improvement based on things that we had prior, right? This idea of nepotism or corruption, right? So at least merit is this idea that we should be judging individuals by something it is that they are bringing to the table, not because somebody, is offering this to them because of who they are otherwise. And the fact of the matter is that networks are very alive and well in the United States for jobs, for getting that tip on the house, for investments. These are networks that are happening all the time, and it has nothing necessarily to do with, like, the person's, like, moral standing, right? But also, there's not as much mobility around, like, economic class in this country as we think that there is. Most people who are born into a certain, like, income bracket, it's really hard for them to leave it. And even wealthy people aren't really falling into lower economic brackets as they grow up, right? I mean, there's just not as much mobility as we think there is. But furthermore, when you live in a country with so much wealth, right? We have the GDP, right? There's so much wealth here. How is it possible that we allow for all kinds of children to, like, be skipping out on meals, right? This has nothing to do with, like, every child, every person should be eating 3 meals in this if they want, right? Everybody should have a place to lay their head. Like, we have
education.
The means. Yeah, we have the means to do this. We just don't have the will to do this. And when we apply our will to do things, Americans get a lot of things done. We have that history too.
Yeah,
so we're pushing to, like.
Yeah, I think this is purposefully designed.
Yeah, and so also just thinking about, what the American dream is. For a lot of people, that is the idea of home ownership and having a little piece of the pie or something.
Sure.
And that's just not even within reach for most people, and that's not even just like a matter of people of color. Like more and more white people are like having a harder time reaching that particular dream too, right? We're having these affordable housing crises all over the place, and so when we're calling for change of policies to make all Black lives matter, those policies would also lift the boats of other people, right? If we restructure and we redistribute resources, that means that everybody gets more, and we need a little bit more of that right now.
How can we judge ourselves to find out if we're really awoke?
That's a good question. I think what we should be trying to do is always like be curious. I think if we're curious, that's a good place to be in. To be curious and to be courageous enough to ask questions and to seek more information. Also, if being woke is also like doing things, though. It's not just about knowing, but it's about implementing, our principles. So are we doing something in our community to make it better? Right, and if not, then we're really not fully woke. We're just retaining information, right? So it's being like a curious, ongoing learner who is engaged in your everyday politics and your everyday community building, and trying to lift both up yourself and other people, right?
Tehama, is it more about, though, going outside of your community and different circles of life? Because if we stay in that protected bubble, whatever your race may be and socioeconomic standing, that's, to me, not, well, yes, of course, it's to educate our peers, colleagues, and family, but I would think we'd want to go out and have the tentacles reach further, because to commingle and see and meet people in other developments and communities and socioeconomic levels.
I think it's always. I'm a people person. I love meeting people. I think
you sound like it. I love it.
Me too, right?
Yes,
sure. Of your job.
I
mean, I'm an educator, so I love working with people, and I'm always learning from others, and so I think that is exciting, and I think it's valuable, and it's good. It's good to learn about difference and about your own difference.
Sure.
How are you different from other people? And that is like, in a way, a very kind of basic thing that we can all do. But it's also a hard thing for a lot of people to do, because they feel uncomfortable and they feel maybe unwelcome sometimes. But also, I think part of the wokeness. So, and this is probably particularly for people who identify as white, is to have conversations about race and racism, like critically, amongst white people, so that white people aren't always relying on people of color to be that conversation bringer and that explainer, right?
Sure.
And so in that sense, a little bit of intraracial community building can be a good thing there too, right? And I think there's been a long tradition. You can go look back at the Civil Rights Movement and earlier of people saying white people need to also organize and raise consciousness around racism.
Absolutely.
Within their group,
sure.
right?
And their lexicon, what words are they choosing to use and describe?
Absolutely. And I think the credibility of the conversation, for better or worse, probably for worse, because it's unfortunate that there's more credibility with certain racial groups than others, but like, when white people talk to other white people about white supremacy and how it's a problem, there's less of a feeling of saying, oh, well, what's your interest in doing this? Like you're trying to get something out of this. And in fact, they are trying to get something out of this. They're trying to have a more racially equitable world that they're trying to live in too. And so I think that message comes across a little bit more somehow altruistically or, I don't know.
Sure.
Rather than having a person of color bring that to a white person. So that work needs to be done too.
My guest is Tehama Lopez Bunyasi, Assistant Professor of Conflict Analysis and Resolution at George Mason University. She is the co-author of Stay Woke, A People's Guide to Making All Black Lives Matter. Her co-author is Candace Watts Smith. So as an educator, as someone who stands in front of 30, 50, 100 students at a time. What is your impression? What is the makeup of the racial divide in that room? And what is the temperature of racism overall, do you think, in this generation that you're teaching?
Right now, I'm at a very racially diverse school. George Mason University is one of the most racially diverse schools in the country. But I've also taught in schools that are like 85, 90% white. And so For me, what I typically, because of there's a bias selection in them coming to my classes when I teach about race and racism. So I know that there's usually kind of an interest in this, but it's those general ed classes that are different, right? You get more, I think, ideological diversity, and I think you get a little bit more, you get a lot of people who just don't know what they want to study yet. So their attitudes are a little less formed, and I think that I think in all of these classes, actually, there is young people today. There's a real strong colorblindness.
Excellent.
And there's a growing race consciousness. So the colorblindness can be a real problem, though, because it's the idea, right, that not only should race not matter, but that it does not matter. So sometimes the colorblind person thinks that they're doing like the morally right thing by being, race doesn't matter. But when they take that ideology up, they're also making less important the actual real big racial differences.
For example,
these disparities that I talked about at the beginning of our interview, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you say that race isn't important for that, then that means that there's something else that's important, which is usually that the talking point is it's those people's fault, right? They created their situation; it's on them to change it, right? Instead of saying, there's a whole history and a set of policies that created that situation. So I see some colorblind students, but I see race-conscious students who are also trying to latch on to this idea of wow, there's a whole history that preceded my existence that created these circumstances.
Sure, absolutely.
And they have to spend time learning about it. It takes time, but they seem game.
Good. That's great to hear. So, Tehama Lopez Bunyasi, with a name like that, you must have a interesting ethnic background. I love your name; sounds Hollywood. And you probably have experienced bias in your life.
Yeah. So it's funny. So my father's Mexican American and my mother's white, and I grew up in California, in Southern California. And when I was growing up, no one ever looked at me and said, "Oh, that's a white kid." They saw me and saw, I'm not, racially ambiguous. I'm not really sure. Maybe she's Asian. But when I was with my father, it was like, oh, yeah, she's Mexican. And as I've gotten older, the way you look changes a bit. And a lot of people, especially on the East Coast, read me as being a white person. So, I get read differently by different people. So that's what it is. And, but my name, my name is so non-European, it's so not
true,
that.
True.
So, my first name is actually a word from an indigenous language that is today California and Oregon, and I'm not even part of that indigenous group. Yeah, so I'm, I have no familial tie. There is a Tehama County in California. I was born in California, so I'm named after this word that I have no
connection,
ethnic heritage to. And then Lopez, so that's my Mexican background, right? So it's Spanish. And then Bunyasi, I married a man who is an immigrant from Kenya, and that's his last name. I love it. So then people see me and they see this really light-skinned person, and they're like, "What the heck?"
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, my wife is Indian, born in the States, and she has her last name because she's a professional, and she had obviously many years in the profession before she met me, and she wanted to continue with that track, which I applaud her for. But we talk openly about when we go to somewhere, it could be a professional event, could be a party, whatever, and she said, "Did you see the looks I got?" Or she's always commenting. And I've been much more acutely aware of my surroundings because I've always been an open-minded person, but certainly proven to marry someone outside of my race because to me it's just about, the content of the person. But it's just amazing to see how much more prevalence there is of racism or just noticing the fact that she notices that people are noticing her.
Oh yeah, for sure. And the thing is, in white environments, a lot of white people think I'm white. It's people of color who are more likely to raise the question.
You're not one of us,
right? You're not white. You're something else. And so, but I am often with people of color who are not. You know what I mean? And so I am very familiar with that dynamic, but I have also experienced, I've been called a spick before, and I didn't even know what that meant at the time because I'm like, what the hell is a spick? I grew up in California, people don't use that word, but when I moved to the East Coast, people said, and I was like, what is that? I had to go home to my mom, and I was like, what is this? And she was like, what is this?
No.
West Side Story? You know, like, it was like 1990-something, right? And, but I've also been, I have been profiled as an undocumented immigrant in my doctor's office.
You're kidding me.
On the basis of my name, even though all of my paperwork was done and already in the computer before I arrived, which included my Social Security number, this person was flagging me, the person at the desk was flagging me as being undocumented and, like, was asking me questions. I was like, you already have that. She was, I just want to see. She literally said, I wasn't sure if you were illegal. I was like, what? So, of course,
You've moved on, I imagine.
I exploded.
Yes.
So that's happened. And so, but for the most part, because I'm light-skinned, a lot of people don't treat me in the same way that my darker-skinned friends and family get treated, And
so I imagine you traded stories and experiences with your co-author, Candace Watt-Smith?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we were friends before we wrote this book, and absolutely, yeah.
Because I imagine, I haven't seen a picture of her, with a name like Candace Watt-Smith, and I'm judging a book by its cover. She's Caucasian? No,
she's not. She's black, and she is...
See? Exactly. Wrong.
Yeah, she's black, and she's brown skin, and I don't think she ever gets read as anything but black in this country. And so that, those are her experiences, and she's got a different... She gets read differently in the room.
and how much more powerful it is for her perspective as to co-write this book, Stay Woke.
Yeah, so she's different. When people say people have different skin in the game, like, you're literally like, what is happening or what could possibly be happening to you in your body in certain situations. She and I have, we live in those kind of different circumstances, and at the same time, we are both political scientists. We both study race and racism, and we both have commitments to anti-racism. And so we bring what our strengths are and try to complement each other in writing this book, because we are writing for a multiracial audience. And so it was a great partnership, because she and we write together anyway, and there are things that she's strong in that I'd rather not do, and vice versa.
Of course, you complement each other.
So we work well as co-authors as well. But
so now, as educators, what would you want to do to try to integrate schools better?
Oh, good Lord.
It's a loaded question.
A lot of this comes back to me around the money, you know what I mean? So the money in wealthier communities, they're able to spend more money on their schools because it's all about, like, tax bases. Mm-hmm. And so, there were times in our rather recent history where the Supreme Court weighed in on these issues, and by slim margins, things were decided in such a way that it's okay for class to determine how much, how many resources are going to go to your local schools. And so I think that's wrong. I think it's wrong. And I think
I agree.
That if we were distributing resources more evenly, we wouldn't be so protective and territorial about, I want my kid to go to the best school. Well, everybody wants their kid to go to the best school. But why are there best schools and some are worse schools? There should be great schools everywhere. We really need to think beyond our noses here and think about, everybody, because the quality of your own personal life is wrapped up in the quality of other people's lives around you. And why wouldn't you want that for kids, So I think that whole thing is a travesty, and I think that the answer to try to undo it is around, what we can do in Congress to change things.
Sure.
And taxes and, all kinds of stuff like that, yeah.
So now, as an educator, as a professor standing in front of all these very thirsty and eager students that are obviously reading the papers, hopefully they're reading the papers, obviously the digital versions, how do you respond when, because I didn't want to bring this back up again, but we went back there because it stems to money. How do you respond when students ask the question about, actions done by the president in terms of being perceived as a racist and his role and the fallout of that?
Well, the students are paying attention to what the president tweets on a daily basis, and they're determining very much for themselves that even those who voted for him or whose parents voted for them and they were on board, are kind of like, this is not ideal behavior. There seems to be even misgivings amongst Trump supporters of well, he's not, I don't like the way he does this one thing, right? But then, of course, there's people who just immediately were, they pegged him as a racist from the get-go because he said racist things, right? He was, even before he started running for office, right? He was
absolutely
trying to convince the United States that Barack Obama was not an American citizen or that he wasn't born in the United States, and treating Hawaii like it was some kind of non-U.S. place, which I'm sure the people in Hawaii are like, what are you doing?
Yes.
So, he gave us that track record. He has a track record in New York City, right, with the whole jogger case, right? What am I trying to think of? You know what I'm thinking about. The Central Park jogger case,
exactly.
Right? And he took out full-page ads in the newspapers saying that these boys should be, death penalty. He was saying...
No, he showed us his true colors, by all means.
He showed them, and even after they were exonerated, he said it doesn't matter. How could that not matter? It's crazy. So he has shown himself. He's shown himself to us over and again.
Unfortunately, we have to leave it here. I could speak to you easily for another hour.
Okay. Yeah,
Tehama Lopez Bunyasi, co-author of Stay Woke, A People's Guide to Making All Black Lives Matter. Thank you so much for what you do every day in and out of the classroom, and for penning this book, because it's so vital for people to understand the temperature, but more importantly, the background and what we can do on an everyday basis.
Thank you so much.
And the best to Candace Watt-Smith, your co-author, and we hope to speak to you in the future.
Okay, great. That would be wonderful. Take care.
All the best to you. My name is Mark Farrell. This has been Insight on the Progressive Radio Network. Special thanks to Bryan Fischer. Please join me as I host Laugh or Sight this Monday night at the Gotham Comedy Club, New York City, 23rd Street. Gary Null is next. Have a great day.
Check out this and all Insight shows on the Insight page at prn.fm. prn.fm. Have Mark speak at your company, your kid's school or college. Mark speaks on critical topics that affect kids and adults everywhere, from anti-bullying, mental health, drugs and alcohol, to overcoming adversity. Visit markfarrellmotivation.com for more info. Insight, Thursday mornings at 11 on the Progressive Radio Network.